Welcome, Saturday night. I am Dr. Daniel Amen, and this is day 4 after my dad died. And what I want to talk about today is what happens in families and pandemics really stress any vulnerabilities there are in families. No question. And if you take a pandemic and then you also add grief to it from losing someone you love, that's stressful for a family as well. And then if you take someone like my dad, who's very strong, very powerful, and I sort of got in trouble from some of my sisters because people are watching the live chats and then they're ratting me out because I tell the truth about my dad rather than he was just this wonderful, amazing man. And he was a wonderful, an amazing man, and he could also be really difficult. And by and large, we get along really well. But if you take a powerful man like him, who's really a giant in the grocery industry, and a very strong mother who raised 7 children and no one went to jail, you're not going to get 7 milquetoast children, and none of the children are milquetoast. All of them have very strong personalities. And as I was reflecting, and today we're planning his memorial, and everybody's got an opinion, and of course everybody should have an opinion. I was just reflecting on all of the family therapy that I've done over the years and how important it is to remember it, even in a time of sadness and a time of stress and a time of grief. So I'm going to give you 8 simple steps that could help you. And as I do, they're helping me to relate better to my family, because I'm actually proud to be Lou Amen's kid and to be part of the family he and my mother, Dory, created. So in family therapy, I created a mnemonic a number of years ago, and it's called relating. And they're just things to remember. And it's pretty simple. The R is responsibility. I'm 100% responsible for how I act. And whenever you blame someone else for the problems in your life, you become a victim, you become powerless, and you can't change anything. And I choose not to be a victim. I think if people had known my father, they would know he was never a victim, that he always took 100% responsibility for his life. Now, responsibility doesn't mean fault. It means your ability to respond in this situation. And I've just thought of so many couples over the year where the husband or the wife wouldn't they were suffering in their marriage and their partner wouldn't come in. And they would always say, well, it takes two, right? It takes two to make, therapy work. And after about a year of doing therapy, I'm like, it takes one. If you can change your behavior, they're going to change. And so I often start with, what do you do that makes your partner crazy? Or in my case, now I have 6 siblings and their spouses or partners and the 50 grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And I'm like, okay, so what do I do that makes them crazy? And it makes them crazy when I talk about the things that irritated me about my dad, especially at a time of grief. So I can choose to do more of that and get more irritation. What do you do that makes them crazy? And what do you do that makes them smile? And then you get to choose to be on the powerful good side or the powerful troublemaking side. And for a long time, I talk about ADD. People have ADD. They're often conflict-seeking, drama-driven. They play this game called Let's Have a Problem. So I need to be responsible to choose the right interactions, not the wrong interactions, or not the more stressful interactions. So the R is responsibility. Take responsibility for you and how you react, and don't take 50% responsibility. Take 100% for how you react. Again, it's not about fault. It's ability to respond to the situation you're in. And now, I've been divorced in the past. So that means I obviously didn't do it right all the time. But, when I realized it's not going to change, I took responsibility to make a different choice. And for me, it's one of the best things I could have done. The E in relating is empathy. Begin to see things from another person's point of view, or in my case, it's about 60 people's point of view, so that I can get outside of my head, I can get outside of my pain, and really see the pain of people I love, people I care about. Dale Carnegie, when he wrote his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, he said, if you just get one thing from this book, work hard to see things from another person's point of view, not just your own. That's the most important strategy in winning friends and influencing people. The L in relating, it's so important, but it's listening. It's actually hearing what the other people said. And we had a family meeting yesterday with all my siblings. And that's appropriate. You should communicate when, there's a significant life change. And I have 5 sisters. And during the meeting, I just went in the kitchen, which is near the dining room where we were meeting. And I just listened to the noise. And I'm like, oh my God, I grew up with all this noise. And Tana, my wife, says I came housebroken and well-trained because I learned how to be around a lot of women. There was a lot of talking. quite frankly, my sisters are all really strong and smart, and they don't need me to solve their problems. But often they just need to be able to talk through things so they feel heard. And listening, there's actually a technique I write about in my books, especially in Feel Better Fast and Make It Last, active listening. So when they say something, rather than react, because there's a lot of reacting when there's stress in a family, rather than react to what somebody says, repeat it back. And then listen for the feelings. Because if they say, oh, you were too mean about Dad, I'm like, I was too nice. It's not helpful. It's more helpful to go, tell me what you mean. Or you think I was too harsh. Listening, repeat back what you hear, listen for the feelings, and then be quiet long enough for them to continue on to say what's really on their mind. And I find myself a lot during family sessions allowing people to finish so people don't just jump in. For someone who's asking, the clinics are open now. They've been open the whole time of this pandemic. So our staff is our first responders. A is assertiveness. So responsibility, empathy, listening, assertiveness. Because sometimes when you feel overwhelmed with words, I can see it. Some people just like go, okay, checking out. Don't check out. You have to say your truth and do it in a kind way. If you're assertive and angry, nobody hears what you're going to say, and then you're going to get pegged as an angry blowhard. But don't let people run you over. We actually teach people how to treat us by what we allow. And so I always keep these two words in my head, firm and kind. So I'm going to say my truth and say what I think, but rather than get angry or storm off, I'm going to just say it. And in a loving way, hold my ground. Because ultimately we teach people how to treat us. T is time, actual physical time. And we have probably spent more time with each other as siblings and with my mom in the last 4 days than any time I can remember in the last 10 years. And it's necessary, but it's also sweet. And it's good because right now, more than anything, that's what my mom needs. She doesn't need extra stress. She's got plenty on her own. So actual physical time. And I was walking with someone this week and they were struggling with one of the kids. And I'm like, do you have time? And she said, well, we're home in a pandemic. I said, yeah, but you're busy, you're working, And I gave her this exercise, special time, 20 minutes a day, do something with her she wants to do. And during that time, no commands, no questions, no directions. And it's so powerful. It's the consistent time. I've been telling you about my nieces who live with us now. And Amelie, the 10-year-old, she's so sweet and she's smart and she's a good kid. Early on, I'm like, you need a sport. I'm like a huge fan of you need a sport. we're not hitting soccer balls with our heads, not as long as you're in this house. And we're not playing tackle football, and you're not going to be a flyer in cheerleading just because of all the concussions. But we're in a pandemic, so table tennis would be awesome. And she grumbled, and for about the first week, she was not a fan of it. But now we're at the end of week 4, and she's so good. I'm so proud of her. But it's that what we do is 30 minutes a day, and so it's time, and she's gaining skill. And I know this will be bonding time for us, and that will help her. In addition, I can just see the tracks being connected in her brain, especially with coordination exercises. So responsibility, empathy, listening, assertiveness, time. The I stands for inquire. What does that mean? It means don't believe every stupid thing you think. Inquire into your thoughts. Whenever you feel sad or mad or nervous or out of control, write down what you're thinking. And then ask yourself, is it true? Can you absolutely know if it's true? A long time ago, so for those of you who haven't been watching every day, I talk about ants. Automatic negative thoughts. The thoughts that come into your mind automatically and ruin your day. They damage relationships. And when you have a parent die, whatever ants are generally infesting your thoughts or infesting your mind, they get empowered. The sadness, the grief, the loss, the trauma is like food for the ants. And you don't have to live with them. You can kill them. You can develop an internal anteater. But you have to discipline your mind. And that comes with knowing a lot of the thoughts you have are just lies. So whenever you feel sad, or whenever you feel mad, or whenever you feel nervous or out of control, or like you want to storm out of the room, just write down what you're thinking. And ask yourself, is it true? Can I absolutely know if it's true? Mental hygiene during a pandemic is just as important as washing your hands. We need to disinfect our thoughts. The N is notice what you like more than what you don't. I know I can get Tana, my wife, to yell at me. Six seconds. If I had a bad attitude and just told her what to do, and she'd yell at me. But I don't do that. In the 15 years we've been together, I don't know, we've had 3 fights maybe. I mean, it's just so good. And one of the reasons why it's so good is we are both purposeful in noticing what we like more than what we don't like. And so in a time of grief, training your mind to go to what's right about each other rather than what's wrong about each other, looking out for their interests as well as your own interests, for their mental stability, not just speaking out of your pain, that's the responsible thing to do. And you see up on the top of my shelf, I have a penguin. And I wrote a book once called The Most Important Thing in Life I Learned from a Penguin. It's about a story of my son whose, goodness, happened 35 years ago. That he was hard for me. I adopted him. And I was a child psychiatry fellow at the time, which means I'm learning how to be a child psychiatrist, so I know nothing. And I was really struggling with him. He was 7. And my supervisor told me I needed to spend more time with him. And I took him to a place. I did my training at the University of Hawaii and Tripler Army Medical Center in Honolulu. And so I took him to Sea Life Park, where they have sea animal shows, sort of like Marine World, Sea World. And we went to the whale show, and that was great. And then we went to the dolphin show, and that was awesome. And then the sea lion show, and that was great. And then at the end of the day, I took him to the penguin show, and the penguin's name was Fat Freddy, who recently died. In fact, his trainer had read my book and had sent me the sweetest note. And Fat Freddy was amazing. He comes out onto the stage, he climbs a 20-foot diving board, goes to the end of the board, over the pool, and bounces and jumps in the water. He gets out, bowls with his nose, counts with his flippers, jumps through a hoop of fire. And then at the end of the show, and I'm just thinking, this is so cool. And I'm, my son's cuddled next to me, and the trainer asked Freddie to go get something. And Freddie went and got it, and he brought it right back. And in my mind, I'm like, whoa, I asked this kid to get something for me, and he wants to have a discussion for about 20 minutes. And then he doesn't want to do it. And I knew my son was smarter than the penguin. So I went up to the trainer afterwards. How did you get Freddie to do all these really cool things? And she looked at my son, and then she looked at me, and she said, unlike parents, whenever Freddie does anything like what I want him to do, I notice him. I give him a hug, and I give him a fish. And even though I knew my son didn't like raw fish, my daughter actually does, but even though I knew my son didn't like raw fish, I realized that whenever he did the right things, I didn't pay any attention to him. That's sort of like my dad working all the time. But when he did the wrong things, I gave him a ton of attention because I didn't want to raise bad children. So I was inadvertently teaching him to be trouble in order to get my attention. So I collect penguins as a way to remind myself to notice the good things about the people in my life more than the bad. If you're going through a hard time, you're going through quarantine, a pandemic, a job loss, you lost someone you love, and there's stress in your family, that's normal. But work really hard to notice what you like about the other people in your family more than what you don't like. And then G, we come to grace and forgiveness. When you're in a family like mine, and we've been telling childhood stories about each other for 60 years. It's ridiculous. I posted, I think, around why holidays are so hard for people. It's you have to hear the same story over and over again about that thing you did that was wrong. Or their perception, because clearly perceptions vary widely about the lore in a family. And don't do that. It's not helpful. Oh, remember when you did this? Oh, remember when you did that? And, you're basically embarrassing somebody for a mistake they made when they were 6. And so, grace and forgiveness. When I was young, I actually went to Our Lady of Grace Catholic elementary school in the Valley. And let me give you a method that I like for forgiveness. And it was developed by Dr. Worthington from Virginia Commonwealth University. And he calls it the REACH method of forgiveness. The R in REACH is recall what happened when they hurt your feelings. Remember it. And then empathize with them. Like, really try to understand why that happened. What was going on with them? My brain imaging work has been so helpful to just realize behavior is just more complicated. There are a lot of reasons people do what they do beyond they just chose to do a bad thing. They could have had low frontal lobes. They could have had a head injury in the past. They could have had Lyme disease. There could have been mold in their house. They may have had general anesthesia. I mean, if you read The End of Mental Illness, they're not mental illnesses. They're brain health issues, and there are myriad reasons why. So recall what happened, empathize with them. Altruistically, you choose to give the gift of forgiveness. You choose to give the gift of forgiveness. Commit to it, that's the C, and the H is hold on to it. It's a very powerful method. And Dr. Worthington, after he come up with the method, he researched the method, he showed how it decreased depression, decreased anxiety, helped improve relationships. His mother was murdered. And he suspected, he knew who did it, although that person was never arrested. And he went through the steps and forgave his mother's murderer. Wow. I don't know if any of you have seen The Shack. It's a very heavy, powerful movie about a little girl who is murdered. And the father has a dream that, his father has a dream, and it goes through the process of understanding things, in part from the murderer's point of view. And at the end of the movie, we saw it with Chloe, our 16-year-old. Tana's like, I could never forgive that person. In fact, I'd probably spend the rest of my life hunting him down and bringing him to justice. And I just couldn't get beyond it. And Chloe, and she's like 12 at the time, she's like, you can't do that. I don't want you to do that. And her mother goes, take it back. And she goes, no, then that means my life would have meant nothing if you end up ruining your life because you can't forgive. I mean, it was just one of my top 5 moments that I love with Chloe because she was just so wise. What are you holding on to that you need to let go of? What am I holding on to that I need to let go of? I loved my dad. And my dad wasn't perfect. And, that's hard to see. But quite frankly, I have 4 children, 2 nieces I'm raising. I absolutely know I'm not perfect. And there are all sorts of things I would have done again. There are no perfect people. And the only one that was, they crucified him. So forgiveness just needs to be part of who we are. And it's so hard in our hateful political climate where both sides are looking for you to make a mistake. And then they exploit it. And they talk about it over and over and over and over. It's a sick society, and it's just not helpful. If we could put these brain-healthy principles in our leaders, we would be better as a society. Anyways, as you go through your family time during this pandemic, take responsibility for your actions. Don't blame other people for what's going on, because then you'll be a victim and you can't change anything. Have empathy for them. Listen to them. Be assertive, but assertiveness, remember these 2 words, firm and kind. Spend time. Relationships require that. Inquire into your own negative thoughts. Don't let the ants steal your relationship. Notice what you like more than what you don't like. Think of me when you see a penguin. And always give grace and forgiveness. Doesn't mean you don't remember what happened. You don't learn from what happened. But it means you don't have to hold on to the negative feelings, the poison. It's not poisoning the other person. It's poisoning you. I hope this is helpful. I'm going to go see the luminescent waves tonight. That's why this is posted a little bit early. But I wish you an amazing Saturday night. And for all of the mothers, I'm going to see if I can get Tana to do this with me tomorrow. I wish you an incredible Mother's Day. I'm going to make sure I spend some time with mine. Take care.